Hello and welcome. I'm your host, author Ryan M. Oliver, and this is the Mighty Books Podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Mighty Books Podcast. Today with me, I have author Ruby Peru. Ruby, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great.
Okay, awesome. So today we're here to talk about your books, your collection of work, and I believe a nice audiobook coming out. So what are we talking about today?
Well, we're talking about Bits of String Too Small to Save, the full cast dramatized audiobook that is
Ooh,
achieving a cult following and sweeping the nation.
nice. Following and sweeping the nation. Fabulous. All right, so it's an audiobook. So now did you write said book?
Yeah, yeah.
Nice. Even
The
better.
book was published as a book in
Right.
2017,
Okay.
but I decided what it really needed was a dramatized full cast audiobook
Ooh.
because there's a ton of dialogue in it. And I felt like I really needed to bring it to life. I just started falling in love with audiobooks and story podcasts.
Yeah.
And I realized that's sort of what this story was meant to be.
hmm Yeah, I know audiobooks are becoming a huge thing, market in the market. I know myself personally, I listen to a lot more audiobooks just from the lack of just serious amount of time, just trying to get things done. If you want to enjoy something fun, that's a good way to do it. So this dramatized version of or dramatized audiobook, did you have multiple people on it? Was it just you doing multiple voices? How did that go about?
Yes, and yes to all of
Yes.
those. Like dramatized means there's sound effects and there's a musical soundtrack. It's like a movie. And full cast means all the voices are voiced by different actors. Although there are so many characters that I do, I think four major characters plus I'm the narrator. And then I have, I don't know, seven or eight other actors who do other main characters and minor characters. So it's a lot of, and they're all so funny. I mean, I found people who know how to do regional accents. It's a fantasy world, so people don't have to have any particular accent or anything.
Right.
They just all need to sound different from each other. So the talking monkey Earl, for instance, is voiced by this actor who does a hilarious regional accent from where he's from in Rhode Island. And I was like, that is my monkey. That's my monkey right there. So everybody who is on the cast is an interesting person who has a unique way of speaking.
That's awesome. Now, how did you go about finding everybody? Was it just put a flyer out on a telephone pole and hope that you get a phone call, or how did you get all these people?
No, I mean there are people acting training, and I'm in the arts world. So I know a lot of people who have acting backgrounds and who have radio backgrounds and who are musicians and who are sound engineers and stuff like that. So I chose them from among the den of iniquity in which I choose my friends.
Well, that really helps when you have kind of an in on the talent, as you will. That's excellent.
Yeah.
Now, so going forward, how long did it take to actually produce this masterpiece, this masterful thing here? Because I mean, I've always wanted to do something like this. It's just such a huge undertaking with the sound effects, different actors coordinating. How long did it take to do this?
It took a couple of years.
Oh God, okay.
Uh, but if you were smarter than me, it wouldn't take you that long. It's just that I was learning as I was going.
Yes,
And so I thought I could set up a sound studio in my home. And my sound engineer said, this doesn't sound good enough. You can hear traffic in the background and stuff. And even though I put those sound baffling on the walls and stuff, so I had to experiment with numerous different locations. And my actors were so understanding that they would like come and do it again. And then eventually I found a radio station here locally that has a podcasting studio and they let me use it for free. So I started doing everything there. So now I've got everything. It's all consistent sound, it's professional quality, microphone, everything like that. And so then I had to redo a whole bunch of the recordings. They were all done in the same location with the same sonic situation. So there was a lot of redoing as I learned about that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of actors, and it's a long, but this is the thing, it's a long book. It's over 400 pages. It's
Oh,
73 chapters. So if you have a shorter book, you won't have that. But that's part of the reason why I wanted to make it into an audiobook, because it is long, and people read less and less these days, especially when the book is long.
yeah.
And so I wanted to make it more accessible to people because I really feel like the story deserves to be heard and people should get it more easily. Especially as I get older, it becomes harder and harder for me to read, and I'm a lifelong reader. And so I was like, you know what? I actually sympathize with these people now, and I want to do something that is more easier to digest
That's
in your limited time with less effort.
Yeah, I know my grandmother, for instance, she was a avid reader, like 2 to 3 books a week. She just crushed books like crazy. Granted, she was retired, which is nice, but when her eyes started to go, she couldn't read anymore, and it was just you could tell that it was just she was missing something from normal routine. She really just loved to read. So at that time before she passed, audiobooks were really she probably would have understood the technology, to be completely honest, but we could have probably set her up with something. She would have more or less enjoyed that. I know just from experience, just running them back and forth from work and picking kids up and doing everything on the go all the time. Sitting down and just reading consume is a lot harder to do. So audiobooks, oh my God, they're a lifesaver. If I want to consume books every year, that's the best way to do it. And if you can make it real stylized like this, real fun and interesting, they're going to want to come back more and more and more for other future endeavors.
It's really fun. It's
Yeah.
best for readers and it's also best for writers because when you're a writer, you want to sell a digital file, not a book printed on paper,
Yeah.
because you make more per, thing. Whereas a book printed on paper costs an unbelievable amount to produce.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the trend is towards digital things, and I think audiobooks are so much more interesting than ebooks.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, you've already got it's being fed to you. Everyone loves being read a story or told a story. It's since we were little
Right?
kids. Ever since we were little kids, I've loved being told stories, and I love good storytellers, not just people who are writing. But I remember I'm just sitting there. One of my favorite things to do on like just a normal day or an evening is to sit around the table with a bunch of friends and family. And if some there's always like a one or two people who are just so good at recounting, stupid memories and something funny or whatever. And when they hook you just with this great how they present everything, it's so fun and engaging. You could just do that all day long. It's one of my favorite things to do in the world. So now that you can do it with an audiobook and add so many different elements, not just someone's voice, it really just draws you in and creates this kind of world that you're kind of a simulation almost that you're in. So that's really interesting too. Did you have any part in like the editing of it all, or were you key in the voicing?
Yeah, I both. I'm the author, so
Yeah.
and I'm the director and I'm
Oh,
the
cool.
producer.
Oh my God.
You know, uh
All the
so
hats.
I have a sound engineer who was very, very creative and was able to add all kinds of music and sound effects and stuff. But as the director, I reserve the right to go in and say, okay, I like this. I don't like that. I'm going to
Right.
need this removed. I want this music to be more like sometimes he would put in suspenseful music in a place that wasn't suspenseful. And I have to go, no, 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 no. I know this book extremely well.
Oh, okay.
So I can tell you that's not a suspenseful part of the book, you
Right.
know. So so I would be involved with, the idea was to, and this is the way I was with everybody that was involved, total creative freedom as long as you're willing to understand that I'm the director and I'll have to stop at a certain point and go, well, yes to this, no to that, you know. So, and then I also worked with the actors in the studio one on one because when it's a book, it's really different for audio actors rather than voicing a commercial or something like that. As the character, you have to know what's going on in the story. You have to know what's being said and then what's the subtext, what is the character feeling,
Mhm.
what is their background with the person that they're talking to. That's all the stuff you need to know as an actor. But
Mhm.
nobody had none of these actors had time to read the whole book. They're just like everybody else.
Yeah.
A few of them have read the book, but so I had to be in the studio with them going, okay, maybe it's just one sentence, but I'm like, no, 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 you have to understand the way this character is feeling right now is blah, blah, blah. Or this is actually a joke, what's being said. So say it like it's a joke,
Uh,
and so then you have to bring it out. You can't just like hire a professional and say, send me an audio file. You have to be there, you
yeah.
know.
A lot of people do that too, and that's something that I've struggled with. I thought about hiring out to do my own audiobook, and I'm like, I don't want to do that because I feel like I'd have the same problem if I'd get it back and listen to it, but like that's not what this character is saying at this time. This was supposed
Yeah,
to be more snarky or sarcastic or
yeah.
serious. That would be what my problem is. But the actual creating is very challenging to do. Just finding the right studio, like you said, or finding the right area to record. It's a huge undertaking, and it took you a few years, you said?
Couple of years. The
Oh,
learning process was hard,
huge.
but I learned everything the hard way, which means now, next time I do it, it'll be easy. I
Right.
know exactly what not to do in every
Yeah.
scenario.
You're gonna
And I
blame.
love being a director. I love being in the studio with the actors. It's fun. It's really fun for the actors. It's really fun for me. A couple of my actors were kids and they're brilliant and they were really fun to work with.
Though that makes it a little easier then. If you have good people to work with and they're understanding and they're just fun to be around, that really makes it a lot better. I mean, not just with this, but pretty much everything.
Yeah.
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 So before we get
Yeah.
too deep in the reads on the actual technicalities and how everything, was put together technically and for the audiobook, can you tell us a little bit about what Bits of Strings Too Small to Save is about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this novel it's a futuristic dystopia situation where a little girl, her grandma have to flee one futuristic dystopia and they jump through a portal into a different futuristic dystopia where they have to solve a big problem and basically save this world in order to create a home for themselves
Oh, okay.
because they lost their original home and they want to create a home that it feels like a home. Home is a theme in this book because all the characters have kind of a different definition of home. Like the grandma, who's this badass hot rod driving grandma,
Nice.
it all starts with they're threatening to put her in a home in quotes, right? Like you do with old people. And that's a unique problem of homelessness, which is where you are old and you have a home, but you can't take care of yourself in your home. So they put you in a thing called a home or a care home, an old folks home. That doesn't feel like home and isn't a home. It's a fake home, but it's what you have to do. So you have this sort of sense of having lost your home. And that's something that happens to a lot of old people.
Hmm.
But also it can happen to a child. Like home is a theme in a lot of stuff that I do because I moved a lot as a child. So
Okay.
where you move to a place and the other kids have a sense of belonging to this place. It's where they grew up, they've been there their whole life. And me, I just moved there and I'm just like, okay, how do I survive? How do I do it? How do I fit in? What do I do? And it never is a sense of it's actually your home. It's just a place where you're surviving.
Yeah.
So after you do that enough, you're like, do I have a home? And most people say, where are you from? And I'm like, I don't know how to answer that question. I typically pick a place that I've lived that I think will seem the most exotic to the questioner, and I say that.
That makes sense. I mean, how much did you move as a kid?
Well, let's see. We moved we moved like to four different locations, but I went to like seven or eight different schools for
Oh,
a variety
wow.
of reasons, you know.
Okay.
So and the places were not like moving next door. They were like moving to a totally different culture in a totally different place.
Great.
But the thing was, my mom was an army brat and she was used to moving practically every year. So for her, it was like no big deal.
Right.
And she thought that was normal. And it took me a while to realize that's actually not normal unless you are in the army, which we were not.
So why the moving, if you don't mind my asking?
A variety of reasons, mostly having to do with my dad was like me. He had a career and then he was like, I'm sick of this. I want to do a different thing.
Oh, okay.
I want to do a completely different thing. Okay, I'm going to do this. We're going to move to this new place. I'm going to have this new thing. And then after a while, you're like, okay, this is kind of not what I thought. Now I want to be an entrepreneur. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to move to this other place. I'm going to buy a business and I'm going to do this. I'm going to make it really successful. We're going to move to this whole other place and it's going to be great. And then like a few years later, we've gone bankrupt
Oh, shit.
and then we have to like move to a completely different place,
Sure.
preferably out of state.
So I can definitely see how finding the home, even your dad, it sounded like you're trying to find a home in a profession and it just wasn't working out for at least a little while. Maybe it landed finally. I don't know, but
Well, I think that's a funny thing about being a kid. You think your parents are adults, but they're still searching for themselves too. You know, we all
absolutely.
are all the time. It's pretty rare, and I think it would be honestly sort of boring to have parents who feel like they've found themselves and they're good and they're stable and they never want to change anything in their life, and that's your life so stable that nothing ever changes.
Yeah,
I think that would be very stable, but also you'd miss a lot of just like survival skills that you learn
that's a
from
good point.
more having more change in your life.
Yeah, yeah. Trying to grow more flexible, being able to be more resilient. Definitely be more
You have
resilient.
to be, yeah.
Yeah, especially in this ever changing world we live in. Okay, so that's the synopsis. What drove you to write this book? How long did you have this in your head? Is it a series or just a one and done?
Okay. Here's how this book got written. I used to be a kindergarten teacher,
Oh,
and
you
I
were.
love this. And every day I would tell the kids a story off the top of my head, and we'd be in circle time, and I would involve the kids in the story.
Mhm.
And some, like if somebody's wearing a red dress, I put the red dress in the story or whatever, and I would make it up off the top of my head. It was the most incredible creative exercise, and I would do it every single day. But I ended up leaving that job for a job writing for a magazine, which was dreadfully boring. And I didn't want to lose my chops, you
Yeah.
know. And the magazine was right across the street from the public library. So after work every day, I would go for an hour to the library and I would sit and I would write. And I was like, okay, I'm going to write something that is as creative as what I used to do with the kids. I didn't have a particular story, but I wanted to have fun making up stories and I didn't want to lose that skill. So the rule was you write for an hour and you have fun the whole time. If you're not having fun, immediately stop and change something about what you're doing until it's fun.
Okay.
And everything that was going on in my life went into this story. You know, like if I met somebody that was annoying, they became a character in the story. If I met somebody, if I had, like, I had a boyfriend that was really into cars, and I had landlady who was like the badass grandma. And I was like, I'm putting those two people together and they're going to be one person. So that's how she became into cards and she became part of the story. And I would do that, I would take people from your life, put them together and be like, oh, now that would be cool if those two people were combined and just have fun making stuff up. And then I was like, okay, I'm not having fun. What do I need? Talking animals. That's what I need. Anything that sounded fun. And I would use like funny dialects and anything that somebody said that I thought was funny going in the book. It was just something that was created very spontaneously.
Oh, very cool. That's not usually what I hear. It's usually I've had this idea for so long and finally wrote it down, and that's actually very refreshing to hear. It just wanted to do that. And you have to be on your toes with those little kiddos. I mean, you really do, being creative and fun and all that. My wife's a kindergarten teacher, so she tells me all
Oh,
the
wow.
interesting stories. Yes. So she's been doing that for 3 or 4 years, 3 years now. But she was first grade for like 9, so she's been around for a while. I call them, they're still babies at that point. They're 5 years old, they're still babies,
Yeah.
essentially. But that's really cool though. That makes sense to kind of harbinger or hold on to your youth with those little guys, and then keep your creativity flowing. That's excellent. Now, I saw here you were also a ghostwriter. When and how did that start?
I've been doing that for about 20 years. And that is, it started because I've been a writer all my life since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
I always knew I'd be a writer. My parents always knew I'd be a writer, but they didn't know that it's hard to make a living as a writer.
Yeah.
And so I started really racking my brains for ways to make a living as a writer. And I was, just doing freelancing and I got a job ghostwriting a memoir for a guy. And it was a fascinating story about a guy who had left a cult that's actually a sort of famous cult. And I had to do a ton of research just to understand his psychology because he still sort of had one foot in the cult. It was very odd, but I loved it. I loved the psychology, having to figure it out. I loved that I had to have good interviewing skills, which I did. I loved that I had to be totally non-judgmental in the way that I listen to this guy because he committed crimes for this cult. That's a big part of what the story is about. And the book is called Confessions of an American Sikh. You can get it on Amazon. And you really can't when you're helping somebody tell a story, you can't judge them. You have to listen to their story and try to figure out how they got to be the person they are, why being that person makes sense to them, what their ethics are, how they got those ethics. And then you have to make it all make sense to the reader, to where the reader, even if the character is a criminal, the reader have to have some sympathy because they see why this person is the way they are and why being that way makes perfect sense to them based on their background. And I loved the psychology of that. I loved that I had the skills for it. And I was like, I know this is not something I ever thought of doing before, but I love doing this. So I set up a website and I was like, this is what I do now. And I started, advertising and getting jobs. And I was like, it's amazing to get paid to write books because I get better with every book that I write. And now I've done true crime memoirs. I've done cult memoir. I've done like such a wide variety of things.
That's awesome. And so you've been doing it for how long now?
20 years or
20
so.
years?
Something like that.
All
Yeah.
right. That's awesome. And how many are you pumping out a year? Doing like one a year, or is it kind of like
I
as
can do
per project?
anywhere from 1 to 4. It takes 6 months to do one, and I can write two at a time if I am insanely focused. COVID was very good to me. I got a lot of work because people were like, guess it's time for me to write that book.
Yep.
Except I realize now that I don't know how to write a book, so I'm going to hire somebody else. So that was a very interesting time for me, and I learned how much I can do when I feed her to the fire.
Yeah, a lot of people came out and were like, I'm writing a book during COVID, but I didn't even think about those who were like, I want to write a book, but I don't want to write the book. So it leaves a nice lucrative opportunity for someone with your skill set. That's for darn sure.
Well,
So
writing is hard, and once people really sit down and start trying to do it, smart people realize, oh, this oh this is not as easy as I thought. Now I see why people get paid to do this. Okay, let's reconsider how we're doing this and like come at it from a different angle.
Uh-huh. I know. I mean, it's something I've always enjoyed doing, but it's hard for me. It's some before this and before I was older, it's hard for me to imagine why it would be hard for people. But as I get older and you get more busy with different things, and you sit down and you crank out a certain amount of wordage in that hour, you look back at the page like, that took me an hour to write. It's only like 300 words. What's wrong with me? Like I should be done already, right? That should be done already. Anything else, I start a project, get it done in a couple hours. Not a book. A book takes so long to accomplish. It is micro step after micro step to finish. It can be
Yeah,
incredibly frustrating. Incredibly
which is
frustrating.
where my philosophy of have fun the whole time comes in because
Yes.
you're not going to get rich off of it. You might get some sense of satisfaction, but
Yes.
enjoying the process is like really crucial, or else you're going to
Is
ask yourself why you did it.
yeah. I've buried myself in that hole. Like, why is this fun to me? Right now, I just want to like walk away and just light it on fire and run to the hills. That's what I want to do. And so I finally kind of adopted a practice. I think I read it somewhere or I heard it somewhere. I don't know. I was just so much information come in my head. I think it was Ernest Hemingway. Apparently, when he would write his books, he would go until it stopped being fun or like his energy kind of was depleted for the day. And that might have been a 20-minute session, hour and a half, three at whatever. But it's
Yeah.
like, I I'm on a good note right now. I'm going to stop here and then I'm going to go do whatever the hell it is the rest of the day. And then he'd come back. That way he was always enjoying the process. He never tried to grudge through it. He
Yeah.
just sat and enjoyed it. So I was like, I kind of like that. That actually works for my lifestyle. If I can sit down for a half hour. This is fun. I'm still liking this. Oh, look at that. I'm tired now. I'm going to put a nice pause on this, put a little pin in it, come back tomorrow. That way I just constantly am excited for the next day. But that's how I kind of have I've had to do it. But I also have kids and they're very distracting. So anyway, so with moving
Yeah.
forward with the audiobook, because I mean, I want to check this thing out. I've always loved the just how much time I always appreciate how much time and energy and effort you put into that detail of a grand audiobook like that. Are you going to be doing another one? Will you do another one?
Oh,
Is it?
yes. In
Yeah.
fact, because I ghostwrite. So I've been talking to my clients more about going that route because as a writer, for instance, I just talked to somebody who might become a client who was a bail bondsman and has like a memoir he wants to tell about being sort of knowing all these criminal underworld figures, like being in the underworld, criminal underworld. And I was like, dude, forget about publishing, go straight to true crime podcasting. That's where all the true crime people are into now. Audio, audio, audio. It's the way to go. So I'm trying to bring my clients that direction because I think in a lot of cases that is the best way to get, if your goal is to get your story out to the maximum amount of people, it's a really great direction to go. And
Yeah.
as for me, I'm also writing a Southern novel right now. And when I'm done that, I'll definitely go to audio. Definitely. It's going to have also a lot of dialogue in it, you know.
Oh, yeah. I think dialogue's probably one of the better way to drive the story anyway. It's great to have a nice setting and someone who can describe a set very beautifully. But I found, especially as I get older, I appreciate that less and less. I want to know about what the characters are thinking about and what they're talking about. That to me is more important. That's how I've been writing lately in the last, I'd say, 6 months or so, really focusing hard on the dialogue portion of it. And it takes time. But people younger people I've talked to who said they hated writing dialogue, they started getting into it and they just freaking love it. And it's the most fun part about writing, in my opinion, is you have this back and forth. So I mean, did you experience the same thing with how you started writing?
I've always written dialogue.
Yeah.
I like to listen to the way people talk and like notice weird little idiosyncrasies in the way that they talk. And
Yeah.
sometimes when you write it down, readers don't hear what I hear. They never notice that idiosyncrasy. For instance, I noticed this thing that people do a lot. They say, yeah, no, but a lot. And it means different things in different scenarios. Usually it means, yeah, I acknowledge your question. The answer is no.
Hmm.
Right. But sometimes it means, yeah, but the answer is no, but I'm just saying, yeah, so I sound positive. Yeah, no. Or sometimes it's an insult. Yeah, no. And
Hmm.
that's like a sarcastic thing to say, right? There's different ways you can say yeah, no, but when you write it, it's really hard to get across what you mean, which yeah, no
Hmm.
you're doing.
Yeah. No. Yeah, exactly. I get you. The tone is lost in the books, and that kills me, is because I read it. I write things in my sarcastic tone that I'll usually speak in. And it's some people are like, well, this person sounds mean. He's not being mean. He's just being sarcastic because he's just kind of a goofball. Oh, I get it now. Like, I shouldn't have to explain that, though. That's what kills me about trying to communicate with the written word. It gets very challenging. I had a character in my stories where he's kind of being funny. He's kind of a turd, but on most part, he's just joking around. And I had someone say, like, I really hate this guy. Like, I want him to fall off a cliff or something. I'm like, that's not how I want you to interpret him at all. And so I kind of looked up, like, okay, I can see why, but it was just like kind of caught me off guard. But tone is such a huge animal with telling your stories.
Yeah, it
So
definitely is.
that's an advantage with the audiobook portion of it. That's great. Now, will you be doing more? I know you said you love directing, but are you going to continue with the actual voice acting as well?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I love it. I really enjoyed doing the character voices and it was a blast. And I also just ran out of actors at a certain point. There was a point where I was like, I need one more male actor. And I couldn't find anybody who would put the time into it, doing it. So I did it myself. And I would like drink these foul concoctions and like get into these like postures so that it would sound like a man.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, this is his voice. Like I was like make up all these crazy voices. And mostly because I just like ran out of people who were willing to work with me.
Yeah.
But it was fun, it's a really fun thing.
Gosh dang. Did you have to like, so I've always tried, I'm trying to get my audiobook recorded and do my own thing too. It's just a huge monster to fight. It's just so much because little things, I don't like how this sounds and that sounds, but getting the voices of the characters, I found has been some of the hardest parts. And then remembering what they sound like. Did you guys have like, okay, any actors who needed like a reminder of what the actor or the voice sounded like at all, or anything like that?
Most of Okay, most of my actors, let's see, I think most of my actors only did one voice. A couple of us, okay, All right, Dorothy's a good example. My child actor had to do two different children who were sometimes in the same room with each other. One is a queen, the queen of a magical kingdom, and the other is an ordinary little girl. The ordinary little girl was her normal voice, and I had to do kind of a fake British accent for the queen just because I couldn't think of any other way to do a queen
Right.
that would sound convincingly queenish. They're not British or anything, but that was the
Yeah.
best I could do. And so I had to teach a 10-year-old how to do a British accent. And then we had to record
Hmm.
the one we had to record. I had to tell her, like, okay, who are you doing today? And so then it'd be like, okay, today we're doing the queen. Okay. And then she'd have to just do that. And then sometimes I'd be like, darn, she forgot who she was in this recording. And I have to have her do it again because she was, and I also forgot as the director and we got confused and then we'd have to do it again because I
Oh,
have to put these two characters in the same room with each other and they can't sound the same. So, and then with me, it was constant because I do the Duchess. She's modeled after Mrs. Howe from Gilligan's Island.
oh, okay.
Darling, she is just so sophisticated,
Yes, I could
but
tell.
also ridiculous.
Yes.
And then I also did her personal chef, who is Tammy, who is like a really bad Fran Drescher imitation. And she's like, "What are you, stupid?"
Yeah.
And then I would do, oh God, what else? I did the man. I did there were some mosquitoes that had voices. I just gave them weird southern accents. Like I would just make up random shit. And then sometimes I had to be like, oh my God, what is that mosquito supposed to sound like? I have to go back and hear what I did before and then try to recreate it.
God, that sounds like so much work. I mean, it is. It's so much work, but I bet the product is just awesome to listen to because my wife's listened to a couple audiobooks that have that kind of detail and she can't stop listening to that kind of stuff. And I'm like, that's great. But I mean, it's only been so few in the grand scheme of things. Everyone else just reads it and then puts it out, but that is just a whole other layer of awesomeness. Now, with the pricing, did you actually increase the price because of how detailed? The book was the
No,
audiobook, or just
the
kept it the
price is
same?
very low. Actually, my object here is not to try to sell the book for the highest possible price.
Sure.
My object is to get readers. I want to, because I've established myself as a ghostwriter, but I don't feel that I've established myself as a creative writer in my own right. And
Yeah.
I just want to get that audience. I want to get fans. I want people to listen to it. I don't care how much they pay.
Yeah.
And so it's actually set up through this system called crowd pricing everywhere, which is where what happens is people leave reviews and it starts out for zero. It starts out free. It costs nothing. The audiobook, the podcast is also free and will always be free. The audiobook costs nothing. And then it starts getting reviews. So if it starts getting 5-star reviews, the price goes up. Maybe it's $1, maybe it's two, maybe it's three. And if it gets up to say $10 and now the reviews start going down, oh, now I'm only getting 3-star reviews. Then that is the system's way of saying, oh, people don't feel they're getting the value for the price. So you bring the price down to where the reviews start coming in 5 stars again. And then it's the perfect price.
That is cool. I've never even heard of that crowd pricing.
Yeah, the publisher is called Scribble, Scribl.
Okay, I've heard of
So
them.
for people who have that Scribble app, you go on the Scribble app, you can get it for free, and hopefully by the time this airs, it'll cost something because I
Yeah.
will have gotten a lot of reviews. But the more people who review it, the more the price gets adjusted to what reviewers are saying, which
That's
is what I
nice.
want. I want the right price. I don't want the highest price, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was just thinking the amount of effort you put into it versus how much it actually will cost was just, basic economic stuff. But I like that because the value that people are feeling like they're getting out of it to me, that makes a lot more sense. Like this was a great production, 5 stars. Okay, it's an extra 50 cents. Cool, I'll pay that. There's some artists and people I listen to or read that I don't care if the book is $100. Like I want to read what's the next one. I'll freaking pay for. I might go, "Ow, that hurts," but I want it anyway, and I'll have buyer's remorse after I'm finished reading it. There are people like that who will just point and click and quick trigger pull. That way they can get the next one of their favorite author, whoever, writer, musician, who cares? So that's really cool that I didn't even know that was a thing. Crowd pricing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Crowd
really cool.
pricing.
And the other really cool thing about the audiobook economy is if you also publish it as a fiction podcast, the
Mm.
podcast is free and it's exactly the same as the audiobook, except maybe it's pretty much exactly the same. But if you get enough listeners on the podcast, you'll get commercials, which you want.
Yes.
You don't want the commercials so much to make money. You want the commercials to bother people. Because if people get on there and they love the book, but they're annoyed by the commercials, they will just buy the audiobook because it's not going to be more than $10 anyway.
Fair.
So you give them a chance to fall in love with the book. And since it's a really long book, they're more likely to do that.
Heck yeah. Then they own it. They can go back and listen to it over and over and over and over again if
Yeah.
they so choose to do, which is pretty cool. That is amazing. Yeah, I definitely like that idea there. So for someone who like myself who's trying to get an audiobook out there and I don't really necessarily have access to studio, what would you recommend for like a little home studio to record at least decent enough audio? What would you recommend?
What you need is to get you a sound engineer who can answer that question for
Okay.
you. Typically, if you have a closet or something and you put sound baffling up, you'll probably be fine. Or doesn't even have to be a closet, it can just be a regular room. If you use too small of a room, that tends to create a bad sonic effect.
Really?
So I don't know exactly what you should do because it depends. If you make some recordings and you hire a sound engineer to listen to them, then
Mhm.
that person will be able to tell you that it's fine or it's not fine.
Oh,
And
okay.
you'll need a sound engineer anyway to put things to, well, if it's just a straight narration, you won't. But if you want to do something cool and fancy like I did, you'll need a sound engineer. And these people are really interesting. They know everything about sound and how to make things sound good. And it's very technical.
Yeah.
And it's good to have them to do that. And you don't have to learn how.
Yeah. No, I don't have to learn how. I actually think I know a guy who used to, I'm pretty sure he's not a sound engineer by trade, but actually maybe he was. Buddy of mine I used to work with at the shipyard. He was an electrician with me, but he used to own a studio, I think, in Seattle, where him and his buddies actually wired the whole place up and he would set up things for like different shows. Like I think it was like an Irish festival or something like that. And he would do all sorts of crazy things. The man is like, couldn't do anything. You tell him he can't, he like, well, hold my beer, let me go take care of it for you. It's just he was just remarkable. I might have to give him a call and go, hey, listen to this and see if this is half decent. Is it good enough?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
just kind of a thought. Yeah, he had a lot of good experience. So that's really interesting. Whenever I heard sound engineer as a kid, I'm like, that doesn't make it. What could they possibly need to know? And now that I've gotten into this whole podcast in the last couple of years, I realize sound is a huge thing and makes a giant difference. Just from the microphone you use up to this place you actually perform the the recording. There's so much detail to this. I had no idea. It's absolutely ridiculous. You learned quite a bit from doing your audiobook.
Yep.
Yeah.
You
I
mean
mean,
about sound engineering?
yeah, just I mean, you
I didn't
probably
learn
are
anything about sound engineering except the following.
except the what?
You need to make sure you accept what I'm about to say.
Oh, okay.
You need to make sure that you have a really clear agreement with your sound engineer as to it got a little bit weird because my sound engineer got so into it that it became difficult to give him direction.
Oh,
And it was like, okay, I'm still the director. So you need to make sure you're working with somebody who can take direction and who understands that you are the owner of the product and you will be needing the source files so that you can make any changes to the future thing and like really set out all that in the beginning. I didn't realize that there's so many like technical details you kind of want to get into a contract ahead of time.
oh,
And so that's something that I learned, which is there's a lot of stuff that the sound engineer is going to do for you, and you want to make sure that you maintain ownership over everything and that they're going to cooperate with you, and that what they're going to do is commensurate with whatever you're paying them. Because, like, my sound engineer put way more work into it than what I was paying him to do. And he kind of seemed to think that that gave him like some kind of rights that he didn't have. And I was like, you shouldn't, that's not what you should do. So the results are amazing as a result, but there was like some conflict because of it. So you want to, it's hard to, working with creative people is very even as a creative person myself, it's like there's always some kind of weirdness. So, make sure the parameters are set out really clearly from the beginning.
That makes sense. Almost sounds like a picture book writer working with an illustrator because I've talked to people who've actually had to create contracts with their illustrators so that they can, okay, I now have the right to this particular page or this particular picture, and you can't do this and this and this. Very similar, not quite as I think in depth as a sound engineer because they're listening to everything you're doing. But holy cow, I did not realize a contract
Collaboration
was
between,
necessary.
yeah, collaboration between authors is weird. Like I have illustrations in my book, which I hired a brilliant artist to do for
Yeah,
me. And he basically, he didn't require anything. He's basically like a ghost drawer.
yeah,
His name is Philip Harrison. He's brilliant and he's definitely credited in the book. But I have the rights to all of the beautiful drawings he did for
yeah.
me, and they're amazing. And he's sort of well known now. I don't know if I would. He would probably has a different type of contract with people now.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, yeah, because it's probably a little more lucrative for them or a little more sustaining if they get a little bit of royalties from that. But I've talked to some people who are talking about or helping me get a couple pieces of art for my books, and it would just be like, you drew something awesome. Can I just buy that sketch from you or buy this, and I have the rights outright like you did. That's what I would do personally too. But if you're working somewhere like a partnership, a couple people I know that they're making many books or a series, they do a little different, which as long as everyone's, happy with the status quo, cool. And we're continue to create, cool. That's really what it is. That's really what it's about, honestly. All right, so I'm curious, and I think everyone else is curious, where can people go check out this awesome audiobook that took you a couple years, a lot of hard work and dedication to produce? Where can we get it?
Any place that you buy audiobook. Audible is the most famous one. It's associated with Amazon, but there's lots of places that sell audiobooks that you can buy at any of those places. And you can get it for free as a podcast on anywhere that you get podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anything. It's in all the locations. It's called Bits of String Too Small to Save by Ruby Peru.
Fabulous. And then we can go and also rate it, which will help you, and review it, which will help you in the long run and raise the price a little bit from free to a little bit to help,
Yeah,
compensate.
that hate to be complicated, but this the original publisher is called Scribble, Scribl. And if you review it on Scribble, you have to review it on Scribble
Okay.
for it to affect the price.
Hmm.
So you go on Scribble and you sign in to create an account, which is just free.
Yeah.
And then you type in the name of the book or you type in Ruby Peru and it'll come up, and you can download the audiobook and then they'll let you review it.
Sweet. And then anything else, any other like books you want to promote or websites, social medias, anything you want to throw out there for people to go check you out?
Well, my website, rubyperu.com, covers mostly my ghostwriting work. So if you're interested in learning about ghostwriting and the work that I've done for that is there. But if you go to bits of string too small to save.com, it will take you to the website for Bits of String Too Small to Save.
Excellent. Excellent. And I can actually get a link to, if you give me a link or something to your website or to the audiobook sites, I can put it in the description so people can just immediately go there and check it out after listening to this. I think that'd be a real help on that front for it. Well, Ruby, this has been awesome. I've
Thanks.
learned quite a bit about creating fanciful and fabulous audiobooks. So thank you for coming on and promoting that today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks for
All
having
right.
me.
All right, awesome. And in the future, if you have other works that come out and you're doing more audiobooks, you're doing more writing, you want to promote some more, hit me up for another interview and we'll do another chat.
Great. Thanks.
All right, guys, I hope you really enjoyed this. Go check out her new audiobook, Bits of String Too Small to Save. Go check it out. It sounds fabulous. It looks a lot of time, hard work, and dedication to get it done. I definitely want to go check it out when I've got a second. I think it'll be fabulous. All right, everyone, have a great rest of your day. And as always, stay mighty and keep reading.